I was like a television addict when I was a child. I spent a great deal of my childhood watching television and sort of fantasizing about television, to the extent that I couldn't say it was a separate sort of structure from my unconsciousness. It was like totally embedded within television and organised my life to a great extent.
You didn't have a television?
Oh yeah, I had a television. Yeah. Oh yeah, I loved the television.
What's the things you watched on television?
Oh God, Doctor Who. I loved science fiction things on TV. So I suppose the things I really remember, things like Doctor Who, the Tomorrow People, the kind of slightly spooky children's science fiction series. I was a complete addict for that, both me and my brother. Lost in Space, you know, all of those things that kind of really remind me of my childhood. Movie going, I mean, I suppose I went to see the usual things that you go to see when you're a teenager, you know, Grease, Jaws, mainstream stuff, but I wasn't really a cinephile.
Like, I grew up with, my parents are quite old, so I grew up with watching old films with them. And really being immersed in old film culture and knowing all the names of actors. Yeah, very, very from 30s onwards sort of films, and knowing all the names of the actors and actresses or whatever, and directors.
Anything in particular? Any particular things that kind of grabbed you out of that genre?
Oh, I used to like noir stuff, really. Gangster films I used to like. And musicals, anything really. Just anything old, which I still like now, anything sort of old. Anything maybe for about 1970, I really like. Same with books. I don't really read anything modern.
So you used to watch most of those films on television,
also
go and see them if they were sort of...
Yeah, I used to see modern stuff at the cinema, but I used to really love old films. Because my parents would go, oh, this is Wallace Beery, or this is so-and-so, this is so-and-so director. And then they weren't really interested in directors, but I got really interested in directors. And
so would they make comments while these films were on then?
You what?
Would they make comments? Would they kind of...
Oh, definitely, yeah.
My family would... about when they first saw them?
Yeah, definitely. When it came out, and my mother would always say that she could guess the date of a film by the fashions and stuff like this. And when she went to go and see them, and who were the actors and actresses and stuff like that. So I just grew up being immersed, and none of my school friends were at all interested in that at all. So, I mean, that's the sort of beginning of just like really loving cinema.
We took loads and loads of slides, holiday pictures, and from quite an early age, from about 8, me and my brother had little Instamatic cameras, and documented everything. You know, mostly holiday-wise, but also pets.
So did you used to have slideshows then?
Yes, we had very formal, very exciting slideshows where all the lights would go down, and we'd have sandwiches and crisps, and we'd watch ourselves, you know, in wherever, in Lake Windermere or whatever, you know, sort of.
And make up a sort of commentary together.
Yeah. That was a very regular ritual, and that was very nice. It was kind of tedious at the same time, but it was you know, it was. And it seemed to be the thing you did in those days. I know a lot of my friends who did that as well. If you didn't have cine cameras, that's what you did. You made it like a bit like a cinema. You put the lights down, and you projected the holiday slides. So yeah, I've got a very, very fond attitude to slides. Just, you know, slide projection and that idea of reliving memories through slides.
Well, my dad used to shoot pictures from about 1940s. On Standard 8 and Super 8, he was always getting asked to come outside and take pictures of us, films of us, which was a lot of like us walking towards the camera all the time. And walking towards the camera all the time. So I grew up with someone who was like always taking pictures.
So you'd hear him saying, walk towards the camera.
That's when we go, oh God, do you have to? Oh. And really hate it.
So is there a record of you walking towards the camera as you grew up? And like,
there's a record of all 6 children doing that. So all of us walking towards the cameras.
Surreal,
and they're all really beautiful. They're all like, as though they were shot yesterday. And when I go home to Australia, I get them all out. I set up the projector, and everyone, no one ever sees them, so I set it up. So that's really good. Unfortunately, I persuaded him to get them put on video, but it's not the same as like the darkened room and the noise of the projector. But they're just such beautiful quality.
So tell me a bit more about the original showing events, because that's quite a nice thing.
What, exploding?
Did the family gather and you showed the films, or how did the shows work?
Well, we'd be like a sort of family get together, and as a sort of thing, my dad would get the films.
20 people? 5 people?
About 15 or 18 people.
Quite big, yeah.
And a lot of sort of the events would be embarrassing moments for the children, which everyone would scream with laughter at. My brother being forced to hold a chicken by my dad, and crying, which is always a favourite.
Age?
6. And he really hates that, so that's good. Good embarrassing family bonding kind of thing. And different sort of moments like that. But I think it's a sort of darkened room, whirling of the projector sort of thing, and it breaking, snapping smoke come out, that sort of thing. Which is very much like the exploding cinema, really.
Yeah.
In lots of ways.
We used to go to the Saturday movie club every Saturday, and you used to see the Flash Gordon shorts before the actual feature film.
Yeah.
And it was thrilling because our parents would drop us off and we go into the sort of cinema. We were about sort of 7, 8, and you'd be in there, and all the kids would just be like fucking sea of kids, and we'd all be like wriggling and all got our sweeties and packages. And then as soon as the lights went down to start showing the first movie, absolute all hell would break loose. Everybody would just be screaming at the top of their voices, and lollies and things flying around. It was just missiles. Just, you had to like go, ah! And it's just like, I don't know what the projectionist does now this every Saturday morning. Yeah, the kids, as soon as it's black, it's like, you know, thrilling.
I was very close to my sister, and we just used to love watching television, watching films on television. We'd just talk about them all the time, and if my sister's seen a film that I hadn't, she'd then recount the entire film to me, practically scene by scene. She'd honestly take about an hour to tell me things.
Really?
It was kind of, yeah, it's kind of annoying in some ways. Would have appreciated an edited version, but so yeah, we were just really fascinated in films as watchers rather than
On television rather than the cinema.
Yeah, and we always went to the cinema. With me and my sister used to go, and we'd go with my mum, my dad, and stuff. So yeah, just kind of grew up just knowing actors' names, just chatting about them, then remembering what other films they were in, and doing all that kind of like building up a general knowledge. So that was it, but it was very much as a kind of consumer rather than a kind of maker.
And then as you get to the top of the mountain range, you start curving down like that. And then there'd be this huge sort of silver screen, and all these cars, you could see them kind of like the lamps kind of going up and down like that as they're kind of finding their place. And we'd drive in to that, and you'd sort of drive around trying to find your mound that was pretty good and close to the screen. And you just like park your car kind of like that, you know, get the sort of huge clunking cast metal fucking speaker, clunk it on the side of the window, and set up camp, you know. And then we would have to go off and sort of play on the swings for a while, and then we'd have sort of dinner, and then we'd go back and play on the swings some more, and all the kids would be down at the swings shouting and fighting and carrying on, and all the ads would be kind of like these huge fucking things would be going on above your head, and you're like on the swing going, hey, you know, it's like fucking like a whole building that's got an image on it. So yeah, so that's kind of pretty exciting. And then you can turn around and you see all these cars kind of parked there like this, you know, and just general kind of milling about, you know, and the wonderful smell of...
So it's a family thing.
Very much, yeah. I mean, the later shows were for the snoggers and that, but they'd also sit... Interestingly enough, they'd park in the back row, all the snoggers. They'd like, you know, like... all the snoggy types would be like way in the back somewhere. So that was quite funny.
So you could watch them through the wing mirrors and things like that?
No, we weren't interested in that at all. We just like... Swings, there's the swings, you know. It's where the kids hung out.
And what sort of films did you see then?
Oh, I think all the sort of like the James Bond films.
You're old enough for the adult films then, yeah.
Oh yeah, it'd be sort of like big adventure films and sort of, you know, I suppose it would be sort of John Wayne jobs, or even later than that would be 1960s stuff, you know, all those. I don't know, we're more excited about the chips and chicken, and just the kind of being in front of that big screen, you know, that big screen was fantastic. And when we moved to Durban for a short while, we had a house that overlooked a drive-in. Yeah. So we used to sit and watch, you know, the movies from our balcony, and you could almost just hear the kind of the accumulated sound of all the speakers kind of wafting up the hill to where we lived. So you could kind of hear what they were talking about, you know, and you could see this kind of screen going on, you know. It's like having a TV screen at the bottom of your garden, in a way. And quite a lot of times, you know, you just go and sit down the front and not, you know, you just sort of, if you didn't want to be in the car, you just go and sit with a bunch of kids right near the front, because cars never really park near the front, but you still got these speakers. So we'd sit right at the front next to the speakers, like, and looking up at this big screen. It was fantastic. So that was a really big experience for me, driving.
Throughout my adolescence, I was kind of starting to watch
like seasons of kind of Godard and Buñuel films, and my dad was kind of interested in Buñuel because of the Spanish connection.
How do I make? I mean, if you talk about inspirations, I was inspired by, for example, Residence videos, Residence music videos, Holger Hiller, Akiko Hada, people who, videos are sort of films who kind of had a relation or had any relation with music and film. I think that was my idea when I was at college.
I mean, I was always basically a painter. That was the thing I was in life. That was my main interest, painting. And I was very clear about what I wanted to do in life. I was, my main skill in life was drawing and painting. And so I always knew I was going to go to art college and I was going to be a famous painter. That was my idea.
Did this film course, film degree, BA Honours in Film, Video and Photographic Arts at Polytechnic Central London. Started off brilliantly, had a great time, first year, second year, not bad, third year, a nightmare, a fucking nightmare, because immediately everybody started going into this ridiculous fucking idea of like, well, you're creative, and you're kind of the writer, director, so you're different to us because we're techies. And there became this rift, this real rift, almost like they joined the union there and then. And the union wasn't about helping to make films, it was about a divisive issue, where they would be saying, well, where do you want the camera? You didn't give me a shooting script. And rather than trying to help the process, it was getting all dysfunctional. And I thought to myself, my God, if this is what the film industry is like, with this fucking hierarchy thing and everybody fucking being brats within the hierarchy, then I really don't want to be there, because I loved first year when everybody didn't know what the fucking way up the camera was, going, whoa, fuck, and all just went for it and hoped for the best, and made brilliantly funny, entertaining, wonderful films.
My kind of history was that I then came out of university and was very frustrated about what had gone on there, in terms of like, I could see that I hated the academic system. I began to become very disenchanted with the whole thing, and I began to realise that if you were going to make political films, then you had to rethink the project. The project had to be totally rethought from the beginning. And
when you say the project, you mean the whole business of showing the whole process?
Yeah, really, yeah. The whole thing.
Yeah, sort of being on art college, I got a little bit disillusioned with the art world, with the workings of the art world. Kind of, everything seems to kind of, the best that can happen to you is to become a famous artist, and then you have to deal with all the having to sell yourself. There was a lot of competition going on in the college as well, and I think a lot of plagiarism and a lot of, I don't know, you might call it inspiration, but I don't know, I just I didn't like the art world as it was presented to me, at least on that college. And I joined Exploring Cinema because I had a feeling that I went to their shows while I was at college, and I liked the sort of free and easy atmosphere. And
Jean-Luc Godard, I was going to say bowled over, because he combined sort of like what were kind of my literary interests with the sort of like with all these kind of elements of like anthropology and sociology, but with kind of trash genre sort of narratives, and just like great sort of visual motifs, and it was just kind of, it had just so many different influences. It wasn't just like a filmmaker, it was like a filmmaker, writer, poster maker, polemicist, it's just, and I was just so excited. And even watching those things on TV, which obviously is a very reductive way of seeing things, that was just so, that was a big influence. And I just used to sit around just watching anything I could. On BBC Two, they had really good seasons on BBC Two. And then, of course, as soon as I started kind of like going up to town, I'd start going to art cinemas and just...
Which ones did you go to?
Everyman, mostly, and the Scala, and the Ritzy, and
seeing what sort of things did you... apart from
everything.
Everything. I guess.
Fassbinder, Wenders, neo-realist stuff, film noir, historical.
So how many times
epics.
a week did you used to go to that sort of cinema?
Well, when I moved to London, I'd be going probably about twice a week, and often one of those visits would be to see a double or a triple bill. So I'd probably go and see about 5 or 6 films in some way or other a week. It was, and then I'd started to realise that there are other areas of filmmaking practice, and I was starting to read books about underground and experimental filmmaking.
So you read about it before you saw any, did you?
Yeah, in fact that's one of my biggest influences, was actually reading about the films and imagining what they were like.
Oh, right.
And then being a little bit
By
underwhelmed.
Who's writing?
Well, this is probably a little bit later, but it'd be people like P. Adam Sidney and Stephen Dworskin. I mean, obviously, kind of film is and visionary film and books like that. But anything I can get hold of, any kind of film culture reader. And I was also.
So can you remember? That's quite fascinating. That idea that you read about some film and then you go and see it. So, can you remember a particular film that you read about that you thought was inspiring, and then you know describe what it was like to go and see it? Can you remember a specific example of that?
Well, I can tell you about something this is a lot later, but I remember reading a description about Ken Jacobs and Jack Smith looking at Joseph Cornell's Rose Hobart, and which is a found film which has been re-edited with the actress Rose Hobart in it. It's from some sort of kind of volcano epic sort of thing with angry tribes and all those kind of elements, but it's got a really odd rhythmical quality to it. But anyway, I read all about it and about them being really excited and projecting it all over the place in their house and trying to project it through ice. In fact, I think they said this, and I've never been able to find this quote since, but that's why I ended up making Requiem for an Ice Baby, because I got this idea of reprojecting stuff through ice.
But what was it like? Did you actually see the film then after?
Yes, I saw the film, and it was nothing like I thought it would be, but I really enjoyed it anyway. So it was.
The one link, like in my work, between the sort of whole underground experimental film thing and the musical that I first found out about in a way was that there was the comedians who were the eccentrics. If you ever see some pictures of them, I think some of it came from them dressing up in kind of blackface, like black minstrel stuff. But they kind of variated it. I don't know whether it came out of that or it was just a variation on it. So they would have black faces with like a white diamond on in the middle of their face, or they would have like extremely exaggerated blacked up faces. Like, so instead of having sort of the white lips, they would have the white lips extended on more of their face, or a white triangle on their face. Very strange. And I first saw pictures of this and I thought, this is incredible that this strange musical thing existed. But then years later, when I was studying Soviet cinema, I found out about this group, which was called the Factory of the Eccentric Actor. And they were known as FEKS, FEKS. And filmmakers like Lev Kuleshov was the most famous to come out of that. And they made these, and they were kind of younger, much younger than the other Soviet avant-garde filmmakers, much younger than Eisenstein and Pudovkin and people like that, Doshenko. They were like teenagers basically, and they were kind of like the ones that were obsessed with popular culture. So what they did, they kind of made this, they kind of were very much into this kind of hybrid of like popular culture and experimental avant-garde art. The idea being, you know, to explore sort of like to come up with a proletarian culture. How are you going to do it? And the obvious way to do it, one of the obvious ways to do it was to look at popular culture and see if you could, like, you know, because Eisenstein did that as well. He studied circus and musical and stuff like that.
As soon as I left college, I just started going to loads of evening classes and daytime classes, introduction to 16mm, studying film theory as well. That's where I started to see an awful lot of work that I'd only vaguely read about, both experimental and kind of art cinema. And
again, any particular examples of things that sort of influenced you, or?
Yeah, I mean, these things are quite obvious things, but it's like Meshes of the Afternoon. First time, Maya Deren's film. The first time I saw that, I thought, wow. Yeah, I could see how you could do it. It wasn't unbearably complex, and it wasn't exclusive, even though it was made about 45 years before I'd seen it. I could see a way in, and I could imagine making it, which is really exciting. And I'd read about how she'd made it as well, so that made it even more possible. And so at the same time, I'm going to kind of these classes and learning how to operate film equipment, and was thinking, yeah, I can do this. So that's how I started making stuff.